My wife's burner phone was hidden behind the good china, the Waterford crystal we'd received as a wedding gift and used exactly twice in 7 years. Funny how the most expensive things in a marriage collect the most dust, while the cheapest lies get daily use. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Felix Rourke, 40 years old, and I make my living finding financial irregularities for Hartwell and Associates. Numbers don't lie, unlike people. When someone's skimming money or cooking books, the evidence always shows up in black and white. What I didn't expect was to use those same skills on my own marriage. The phone buzzed against the china cabinet at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Brielle was supposedly at her book club, discussing whatever wealthy women pretend to read between wine pours. The text preview showed just enough to make my stomach drop. Can't wait to feel you inside me again, baby. Tomorrow at the usual place. AT. 7 years of marriage, and I'd never seen my wife type anything steamier than pick up milk. I'd suspected for months. The signs were textbook, unexplained cash withdrawals, sudden girls' trips to Napa, new lingerie that never made appearances in our bedroom. Brielle Torin Rourke, luxury event planner to Seattle's elite, had been planning more than charity galas. The burner phone contained 3 months of evidence: photos, videos, hotel receipts, and enough explicit messages to fill a romance novel. Her affair partner was Theodore Teddy Voss, a real estate developer who specialized in turning historic buildings into overpriced condos. I'd met him twice at Brielle's events, a glad-handing pretty boy who wore cologne like armor and talked about his Porsche within 5 minutes of any conversation. The messages revealed their plan in nauseating detail. They'd been meeting twice a week at the Fairmont Olympic, charging it to one of Teddy's corporate accounts. More damaging was their discussion about my assets. Brielle had photographed our bank statements, investment portfolios, even the deed to our Capitol Hill condo. They were planning my financial destruction with the same enthusiasm they brought to their afternoon romps. "Felix is so predictable," read one message from Brielle. "He'll never see it coming. After the divorce, we can buy that place in Bellevue you showed me." Teddy's response made my hands shake. "Can't wait to spend your husband's money on better things, starting with that ring you deserve." I sat in our kitchen, my kitchen, since I'd paid the mortgage for 7 years, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. That would come later, in private moments when I'd remember how she used to laugh at my terrible jokes. This was something else entirely. This was the feeling I got when I found a client's missing money hidden in offshore accounts. This was the thrill of discovering someone's carefully constructed lie. Brielle came home at 12:30 a.m., smelling like expensive wine and cheap decisions. She kissed my cheek with lips that had been on another man hours earlier. "How was book club?" I asked. "Oh, you know how it is. Margaret always dominates the discussion." She kicked off her heels and headed toward the bedroom. "I'm exhausted. Don't stay up too late with your spreadsheets." I watched her go, memorizing the way she moved through our home like she owned it. In Washington state, she owned half of everything, legally speaking, but I'd built my career on understanding that legal and actual were often two different things. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Nash Sullivan's security firm in Georgetown. Nash was an ex-Seattle PD detective who'd gone private after a department scandal he'd had nothing to do with. We'd met through mutual friends and bonded over our shared appreciation for good whiskey and bad television. More importantly, Nash understood that sometimes justice required creativity. "Felix?" Nash looked surprised to see me in his cramped office. "Everything okay, man? You look like someone stole your lunch money." "Worse, someone stole my wife." I handed him the burner phone. "I need help." Nash scrolled through the messages, his expression growing darker. "Jesus, Felix, this is detailed. How long has this been going on?" 3 months that I can prove, maybe longer." I sank into the chair across from his desk. "They're planning to clean me out in the divorce. I need to know everything about this Teddy guy." "Theodore Voss? I know him." Nash's smile was unpleasant. "Runs Voss Development. He's been cutting corners on construction projects, bribing inspectors, the usual sleazeball stuff. Nothing anyone's been able to prove, but the rumors are solid." "Can you get me more than rumors?" "Give me a week." "But Felix—" Nash leaned forward. "What are you planning here? Because if you're thinking about doing something stupid—" "I'm thinking about doing something smart," I interrupted. "Brielle thinks she's playing chess while I'm playing checkers. Time to show her I've been playing chess all along." That evening, I confronted Brielle in our living room. She was planning another event, surrounded by fabric samples and vendor contracts, looking every inch the successful businesswoman she claimed to be. We need to talk, I said. She didn't look up from her laptop. Can it wait? I'm trying to finalize the Morrison wedding details. It's about your book club. That got her attention. Her fingers froze over the keyboard, and I saw the exact moment she decided to lie to my face. What about it? Margaret called looking for you. Apparently book club was canceled last night due to her food poisoning. I kept my voice level, conversational. She was worried because you never returned her text. Brielle's face went through several expressions, surprise, calculation, then practiced innocence. Oh, that's right. I went to see a movie instead. I should have mentioned it. What movie? The new romantic comedy. The one with, that actress. She waved her hand vaguely. I can't remember the name. Brielle. I sat down across from her. I found the phone. The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. Too quickly. What phone? I placed the burner phone on the coffee table between us. She stared at it like it might explode. I can explain, she started. I'm sure you can. You're very creative. I stood up. But I don't want to hear it. I want you out. Felix, please. Tonight, Brielle. Go to Teddy's place or a hotel or wherever you've been planning to go anyway, but don't sleep here tonight. She tried tears first, then anger, then bargaining. She promised to end the affair, go to counseling, do whatever it took to save our marriage. But I'd read 3 months of messages. I knew exactly what she thought of me, our marriage, and our future together. This is my house too, she finally said, her mask slipping completely. You can't just kick me out. You're right. It's your house too, for now. I picked up the burner phone. But I'm not sleeping next to someone who's been planning to rob me blind, so one of us is leaving tonight, and it's not going to be me. She left an hour later with 2 suitcases and a face full of rage. I watched her load them into her BMW, the one I'd co-signed for, and drive away into the Seattle night. Then I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and started planning. The next morning, I called Maris Ventor, Brielle's younger sister and the only member of her family I actually respected. Maris was a clinical therapist who'd never bought into Brielle's princess act. Where Brielle was all surface glamour and social climbing, Maris had substance. She was also the only person who might give me straight answers about my wife's behavior. Felix? Maris sounded surprised. Isn't it a little early for you to be calling? Brielle didn't come home last night. I thought you should know. A pause. What happened? I found out about her affair. With Teddy Voss. Another pause, longer this time. I'm sorry, Felix, but I can't say I'm surprised. You knew? I suspected. Brielle's been different lately. More secretive. More vindictive when she talks about you. I was hoping I was wrong. Maris sighed. Are you okay? I'm working on it. Can we meet for coffee? I could use someone to talk to who isn't planning to rob me. We met at Victrola on Capitol Hill, a few blocks from my condo. Maris looked tired, like she'd been expecting this conversation for months. She ordered a double espresso and settled into the worn leather chair across from mine. How bad is it? She asked. I told her everything. The messages, the photos, the financial planning, the timeline. Maris listened without interruption, her expression growing colder with each detail. That snake, she said finally. I'm sorry, Felix. I know she's my sister, but that's exactly what she is. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Has Brielle always been like this? Maris laughed bitterly. Always. Growing up, she'd steal my toys and then convince our parents I'd lost them. She cheated her way through high school and college, always found some man to do her work for her. You were just the latest in a long line of people she's used. Why didn't you warn me? Would you have listened? You were crazy about her, and I hoped marriage might change her, that having someone who actually loved her might make her grow up. Maris shook her head. I should have known better. What do you know about her finances? Her business? Touring events? It's struggling. Has been for 2 years. She's been losing clients to younger, cheaper competitors. I think that's part of why she's so focused on your money. This was news to me. Brielle had always claimed her business was thriving, showed me contracts and invoices that suggested steady growth. But if she was lying about the affair, she could certainly lie about her income. Maris, I need another favor. I'm going to fight this divorce, and I'm going to fight dirty. Brielle's planning to take everything I've worked for and hand it to her boyfriend. I can't let that happen. What do you need? Information about her business, her friends, her plans, anything that might help me protect myself? Maris studied my face for a long moment. You're not just talking about protecting yourself, are you? You're planning revenge. I'm planning justice. There's a difference. Is there? But she was smiling when she said it. What kind of information do you need? I spent the rest of the week gathering intelligence. Nash came through with a detailed report on Teddy Voss that read like a prosecutor's dream. The man was dirty from his Hermes loafers to his perfectly styled hair, building code violations, bribed inspectors, unpaid contractors, and at least 3 ongoing lawsuits from previous business partners. His company was leveraged to the hilt, surviving on credit and charm in equal measure. More interesting was his personal life. Theodore Voss was married to Miranda Voss, a pharmaceutical heiress who'd bankrolled his company from the beginning. Miranda apparently had no idea about her husband's afternoon activities, based on her social media posts showing their perfect marriage to her 50,000 Instagram followers. Rita Chen, my assistant at Hartwell & Associates, helped me dig into Brielle's business finances. What we found was ugly. Torrent Events was hemorrhaging money, behind on rent, and facing several unpaid vendor invoices. Brielle had been using our joint credit cards to keep the business afloat, racking up nearly $40,000 in debt I knew nothing about. She's been forging your signature on the credit applications, Rita told me, spreading the paperwork across my office desk. Look at these dates. You were in Portland for the Morrison audit when this American Express account was opened. Can we prove the forgery? Easily. I compared the signatures to your actual ones from the corporate accounts. It's not even close. She didn't even try to make it look authentic. This was better than I'd hoped. Credit fraud was a federal crime, which gave me leverage in the divorce proceedings. But more importantly, it showed Brielle's desperation. She'd been stealing from me for months to keep her failing business alive. My phone buzzed with a text from Nash. Got something good. Meet me at my office. Nash's something good was a USB drive containing security footage from the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. The video showed Brielle and Teddy entering and leaving rooms together on 12 separate occasions over the past 3 months. The timestamps matched perfectly with Brielle's book club meetings and client consultations. How did you get this? I asked. I know a guy who knows a guy. The hotel's head of security used to work with me at SPD. He's not happy about people using his hotel for affairs, especially when one of them is married to someone else. Nash grinned. Apparently your wife and her boyfriend were pretty obvious about what they were doing. Loud, too. This is admissible in court? With the right lawyer, yeah. You're going to need someone who specializes in high-conflict divorces, someone who doesn't mind getting their hands dirty. Any recommendations? Sarah Martinez at Martinez & Associates. She's expensive, but she's a shark. If anyone can protect your assets and make Brielle pay for what she's done, it's Sarah. I called Sarah Martinez that afternoon and scheduled an emergency consultation. Her office in downtown Seattle was all glass and steel, designed to intimidate. Sarah herself was a small woman in her 50s with silver hair and the coldest eyes I'd ever seen. Mr. Rourke, she said, reviewing the evidence I'd brought. This is quite comprehensive. Your wife has been very foolish. Can you help me? I can destroy her, Sarah said matter-of-factly. The question is how far you want me to go. We can file for divorce on grounds of adultery, seek full restitution for the credit fraud, and probably get you a favorable asset division. But if you want to really make her pay... What did you have in mind? Sarah smiled, and I understood why Nash had called her a shark. Your wife's business is built on reputation and social connections. Seattle's high society is surprisingly small and surprisingly gossipy. If certain information about her behavior became public knowledge, her clients would drop her. Like a hot potato. Rich people don't like scandal, especially when it involves theft and adultery. They'd find new event planners within a week. I thought about Brielle's smug messages, her plans to spend my money on a new life with Teddy. I thought about 7 years of marriage, of believing her lies, of being treated like a fool. Do it, I said. Sarah's smile widened. This is going to be fun. The Pemberton Foundation Gala was Brielle's biggest event of the year, a 500 per-plate charity dinner that attracted Seattle's wealthiest families. She'd been planning it for 6 months, and its success would determine whether Torrent Events survived another year. It was also the perfect venue for my first move. I hadn't spoken to Brielle since she'd left our condo a week earlier. She'd sent several text messages, alternately apologetic and demanding, but I'd ignored them all. Sarah Martinez had advised me to let Brielle think she was in control while we prepared our counterattack. The key to winning a divorce war, Sarah had explained, is making sure your opponent doesn't know they're in a war until it's too late. The gala was held at the Four Seasons, in a ballroom that probably cost more to rent than most people made in a year. I arrived fashionably late, wearing my best suit and carrying a small gift bag that contained the first phase of my revenge. Brielle was in her element, gliding between tables in a silver dress that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. She looked beautiful, confident, completely in control of her domain. She also looked surprised to see me. Felix? She approached cautiously, her smile brittle. I didn't expect you to come. I bought the tickets months ago. Seemed ashamed to waste them. I kissed her cheek like nothing had changed. You look lovely. Is Teddy here tonight? Her face went pale. I don't know what you mean. Of course you do, but don't worry. I'm not here to cause a scene. I'm here to support my wife's career. I handed her the gift bag. A little something for your efforts. She looked inside and found a USB drive. What is this? A wedding present for you and Teddy. I thought you might want to share your favorite memories with your guests. Before she could respond, I walked away and found my table. I'd been seated with the Pemberton Foundation board members, influential people who'd known me through Brielle's work for years. They welcomed me warmly, asking about my job and making small talk about the weather. At exactly 8:30 p.m. during the salad course, the ballroom's projection screens flickered to life. Instead of the planned slideshow about the Foundation's charitable work, the screens showed security footage from the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. High-definition video of Brielle and Teddy entering a hotel room together, timestamps clearly visible. The ballroom went silent. 500 of Seattle's elite watched my wife's affair play out in real time, complete with passionate kissing and wandering hands. The footage ran for exactly 2 minutes before cutting to black. Brielle stood frozen at the head table, her face white with shock. Teddy Voss, who'd been sitting with his wife Miranda at table 12, looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then the whispers started, growing louder until they filled the room like a swarm of angry bees. I stood up, tapped my wine glass with my knife, and waited for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the room's sound system. I apologize for the interruption. As you've just seen, my wife has been working very hard to make tonight's event memorable. I think we can all agree she's succeeded. A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Brielle was staring at me with a mixture of horror and rage. Unfortunately, I continued, I won't be able to stay for dessert. I have some paperwork to file in the morning. Divorce papers, to be specific. But please, don't let my personal drama interfere with your charitable giving. The Pemberton Foundation does excellent work, even if their event planner has questionable ethics. I walked out of the ballroom to absolute silence, leaving behind my wife's ruined reputation and the wreckage of her biggest client relationship. My phone started ringing before I reached my car. Brielle's name flashed on the screen again and again, but I let it go to voicemail. I had other calls to make. Nash was waiting at my condo when I got home, a bottle of champagne in his hand and a huge grin on his face. How'd it go? He asked. Better than expected. The video was perfect quality. And the reaction? Let's just say Brielle won't be planning any more charity galas for a while. I opened the champagne and poured 2 glasses. Phase 1 complete. What's Phase 2? Tomorrow, Sarah files the divorce papers. Adultery, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress. We're asking for everything. The condo, the cars, full restitution for the stolen money, and punitive damages. Think you'll get it? With that video as evidence? Absolutely. I raised my glass. To justice. To justice, Nash agreed, and to making cheaters pay. We drank to my wife's destruction, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine happiness. The next morning, Sarah Martinez called with an update. The papers have been filed and served, she said. Your wife's attorney called an hour ago, asking about a settlement conference. Already? That was fast. The video made quite an impression. Apparently, Brielle spent the night fielding calls from angry clients. 3 major contracts have already been canceled, and the Pemberton Foundation is demanding a full refund of their deposit. What about Teddy? His wife kicked him out this morning. She's filing for divorce too, and she's not going to be as generous as we are. Miranda Voss has family money and excellent lawyers. Teddy's about to learn what it feels like to be on the receiving end of a high-conflict divorce. I felt a warm glow of satisfaction. So, what's our next move? We wait. Let Brielle and her lawyer panic for a few days while they realize how bad their position is. Then we negotiate from a position of strength. But I wasn't interested in waiting. Brielle had spent months planning my destruction. Now it was my turn to be proactive. I called Rita at the office and asked her to research Brielle's remaining clients. Within an hour, she'd sent me a comprehensive list of upcoming events, contact information, and contract details. Most of her business comes from referrals, Rita explained when I called her back. Rich women recommending her to their friends. If you can damage her reputation with a few key clients, word will spread quickly. Any suggestions on where to start? The Morrison wedding is next weekend. It's a $200,000 event, and Mrs. Morrison is very influential in the social scene. If that wedding goes badly, Brielle's reputation will be finished. Exactly. But Felix, what are you planning? Because if you're thinking about sabotaging the wedding directly, nothing illegal, I assured her. Just making sure the right information reaches the right people at the right time. I spent the rest of the day crafting a carefully worded email to Mrs. Morrison, explaining my concerns about Brielle's recent behavior and her questionable business practices. I attached copies of the credit fraud documents and suggested she might want to verify that her deposits were properly secured. I sent similar emails to Brielle's other major clients, always positioning myself as a concerned husband trying to protect innocent people from my wife's financial problems. The responses came quickly. Mrs. Morrison called that evening, her voice shaking with anger. Mr. Rourke, I just spoke with my bank. The check I gave your wife for the wedding deposit was cashed 3 weeks ago, but the money isn't in her business account. Do you know where it went? I did know. Rita had traced the money to Brielle's personal account, where it had been used to pay her overdue rent and credit card bills. I'm afraid I don't, Mrs. Morrison, but given what I've discovered about her recent behavior, I'd recommend contacting your attorney immediately. This is unacceptable. My daughter's wedding is in 6 days. I'm truly sorry. I had no idea about any of this until recently. Mrs. Morrison hung up, and I knew Brielle's phone would be ringing within minutes. I was right. My wife called at 11 p.m., her voice hoarse with rage and desperation. Felix, what have you done? I've protected innocent people from your fraud, I said calmly. Mrs. Morrison deserved to know that her wedding deposit was stolen. You're destroying my business. You destroyed your business when you decided to steal from your clients. I'm just making sure people know about it. Please, Felix, I'll do anything. I'll end things with Teddy. I'll pay back every penny. I'll sign whatever prenup you want. Just stop this. It's too late for negotiations, Brielle. You made your choice when you decided to rob me and humiliate me. Now you get to live with the consequences. You bastard! I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight I was going to sleep peacefully for the first time in months. The Morrison wedding imploded spectacularly. Mrs. Morrison hired emergency legal counsel and froze all payments to Torrent Events, leaving Brielle unable to pay vendors or secure the venue. The wedding was postponed indefinitely, and the story spread through Seattle's social circles like wildfire. By Wednesday, Brielle had lost 6 more clients. Her business phone was disconnected for non-payment, and her office lease had been terminated. Torrent Events, which had taken her 5 years to build, ceased to exist in less than a week. But I wasn't finished. Nash had been monitoring Teddy Voss's situation, and the news was delicious. Miranda Voss had not only kicked her husband out of their Bellevue mansion, she'd also removed him from all corporate accounts and filed an injunction preventing him from accessing company funds. Voss development was effectively frozen until the divorce proceedings concluded. He's staying at a Motel 6 in Tukwila, Nash reported with obvious glee. Driving a rental car and eating fast food. Apparently Miranda's lawyers moved faster than he expected. What about his business? At a complete standstill. 3 construction projects have been halted because he can't make payroll. The contractors are filing liens, and the city is investigating those building code violations we found. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. It gets better. Remember that pharmaceutical money Miranda brought to the marriage? Turns out she's not just rich, she's vindictive. She hired a forensic accountant to trace every penny Teddy spent on his affairs. Hotel rooms, jewelry, dinners. She's documenting everything for the divorce proceedings. I felt a warm glow of satisfaction. Teddy and Brielle had planned to build their future on the ruins of my marriage. Instead, they destroyed each other. But my personal satisfaction was interrupted by a call from Sarah Martinez. We have a problem, she said without preamble. Brielle's attorney wants to meet. Today. What's the urgency? Your wife is claiming harassment. She says you've been systematically destroying her business and her reputation through a campaign of defamation and interference with her contracts. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Can she prove that? She has copies of the emails you sent to her clients. Her lawyer is threatening to file criminal charges for harassment and civil charges for intentional interference with business relationships. But everything I told her clients was true. The credit fraud, the missing deposits. Truth is a defense against defamation, but not against harassment. If a court decides you were deliberately trying to destroy her livelihood rather than simply protecting her clients, you could be in serious trouble. This was not part of the plan. I'd been so focused on making Brielle pay that I hadn't considered the legal risks of my own actions. What do you recommend? We meet with them today, see what they want. Maybe we can work out a deal that protects you from criminal charges while still getting you a favorable divorce settlement. The meeting was held at Sarah's office that afternoon. Brielle arrived with her attorney, a sharp-dressed man named David Klein, who specialized in defending white-collar criminals. She looked terrible, exhausted, hollow-eyed, wearing clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. "Felix," she said when she saw me, "we need to talk." "That's what we're here for," Sarah interjected smoothly. "Mr. Klein, what are your client's demands?" Klein opened a folder and spread documents across the conference table. "Mr. Rourke has engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment designed to destroy my client's business and reputation. We have evidence of defamatory communications, interference with existing contracts, and conspiracy to damage her professional relationships." "Everything my client told Mrs. Morrison and the other clients was factually accurate," Sarah replied. "Ms. Torin did commit credit fraud, and she did misappropriate client deposits. Mr. Rourke was protecting innocent people from further victimization." "The truth of the statements isn't the issue," Klein said. "The issue is intent. Mr. Rourke didn't contact these clients out of concern for their welfare. He contacted them specifically to destroy his wife's business as revenge for her adultery. He wasn't wrong. My motives had been entirely vindictive, even if my methods were technically legal." "What do you want?" I asked. Brielle leaned forward. "I want you to stop. No more emails, no more phone calls, no more sabotage. In exchange, I'll agree to a quick, quiet divorce. We'll split the assets 50-50, and I'll take responsibility for the credit card debt." "That's generous," Sarah said carefully. "But my client is entitled to much more than 50%, given the adultery and fraud." "Your client is about to be arrested for criminal harassment," Klein replied. "I've already spoken with the prosecutor's office. They're very interested in Mr. Rourke's activities." The room fell silent. I could feel my carefully constructed revenge plan crumbling around me. "I need to speak with my client privately," Sarah said. Klein and Brielle left the conference room, and Sarah closed the door behind them. "How bad is this?" I asked. "Bad. Klein isn't bluffing about the criminal charges. Harassment is a serious crime in Washington, and your emails could definitely be interpreted as a pattern of threatening behavior." "So, I have to take the deal?" "Unless you want to risk jail time, yes. 50-50 isn't ideal, but it's better than losing everything to legal fees while you fight criminal charges." I felt the familiar taste of defeat. Once again, Brielle was going to get away with her crimes while I paid the price for trying to seek justice. "There has to be another way," I said. Sarah studied my face for a long moment. "There might be, but it would require you to be very patient and very careful. Can you do that?" "What did you have in mind?" "We take the deal, end the divorce quickly and quietly. But we don't end our investigation into her criminal activities. The credit fraud is still a federal crime, and the client deposit theft is embezzlement. We just need to let the authorities discover it on their own, without any appearance of involvement from you." "How long would that take?" 6 months, maybe a year. But Felix, you have to understand. If you agree to this plan, you can't contact Brielle or interfere with her life in any way. No revenge, no sabotage, nothing. You have to appear to have moved on completely." I thought about it for a long moment. The idea of letting Brielle think she'd won was almost physically painful, but the alternative was criminal charges and financial ruin. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's take the deal." We called Klein and Brielle back into the room and hammered out the details. The divorce would be finalized within 60 days, with assets split equally and Brielle taking responsibility for her business debts. I would make no further contact with her clients or associates, and she would drop any consideration of criminal charges. Brielle looked relieved when we shook hands. She probably thought she'd outmaneuvered me, turned my own revenge tactics against me to secure a favorable settlement. She had no idea what was coming next. 6 months later, I was living in a new apartment in Fremont and dating a wonderful woman named Jennifer who worked as a veterinarian. Life had moved on, and I'd almost convinced myself that I was over my need for revenge against Brielle. Then Sarah Martinez called with news that changed everything. "The FBI raided Brielle's apartment this morning," she said without preamble. "Credit fraud, mail fraud, and embezzlement charges. Apparently someone tipped them off about her business practices." I felt a familiar thrill of satisfaction. "Someone?" "Mrs. Morrison, actually. She filed a complaint with the postal inspectors about the stolen wedding deposit, and they referred it to the FBI's white-collar crime unit. Once they started digging, they found a pattern of fraud going back 3 years. What's the exposure? 20 to 30 federal charges. If convicted, she's looking at 5 to 10 years in prison." I should have felt vindicated. This was the justice I'd wanted, delivered by legitimate authorities without any involvement from me. But instead, I felt oddly empty. "There's more," Sarah continued. Teddy Voss was arrested yesterday on tax evasion charges. Apparently, he's been hiding income from his construction business for years. The IRS got interested when his divorce proceedings revealed discrepancies in his reported assets. Let me guess. Miranda's forensic accountant found the evidence? Exactly. She turned everything over to the authorities as part of her divorce strategy. Teddy's looking at criminal charges and a massive tax bill. He'll be lucky to avoid prison. So both of my tormentors were facing federal prosecution, their lives destroyed by their own greed and stupidity. I should have been celebrating. Instead, I found myself thinking about Maris. Brielle's sister had been a constant source of support during the divorce proceedings, providing emotional stability and practical advice when I needed it most. We'd grown close over the months, bonding over our shared frustration with Brielle's behavior and our mutual desire to see justice done. What had started as friendship had gradually become something more. Maris was everything Brielle wasn't. Honest, compassionate, genuinely caring about other people. She was also beautiful in a natural way that didn't require designer clothes or professional makeup. We'd been careful not to let our relationship become romantic while the divorce was pending, but now that it was finalized, we'd begun exploring the possibility of something deeper. Felix? Sarah's voice brought me back to the present. Are you still there? Sorry, just processing all this. What happens next? Nothing that involves you. The federal prosecutors have everything they need, and your name isn't mentioned anywhere in their files. As far as the government is concerned, you're just another victim of your ex-wife's crimes. Good. I want to stay as far away from this as possible. Smart. Enjoy your new life, Felix. You've earned it. I hung up and called Maris to share the news. She was at her office between therapy sessions, but she made time to talk. The FBI arrested Brielle this morning, I told her. A long pause. How do you feel about that? Honestly, I'm not sure. I thought I'd be happier. Revenge rarely brings the satisfaction we expect, Maris said gently. You're a good man, Felix. You're not built for hatred, even when it's justified. Maybe, but I can't say I'm sorry to see her face consequences for what she did. Neither am I. Brielle has been hurting people her entire life. Maybe prison will finally teach her that actions have consequences. We talked for a few more minutes before Maris had to return to her patients. I spent the rest of the day trying to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting to thoughts of justice, revenge, and the strange emptiness that comes when a long-sought victory finally arrives. That evening, Jennifer and I had dinner at a small Italian restaurant in her neighborhood. She was telling me about a difficult surgery she'd performed that day, saving a dog that had been hit by a car when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number. Felix, please call me. It's important. B. Brielle. Somehow she'd gotten my new phone number. Everything okay? Jennifer asked, noticing my expression. Just work stuff, I lied, putting the phone away. Nothing that can't wait. But the message nagged at me through dinner and the movie we watched afterward. What could Brielle possibly want? She was facing federal charges, her business was destroyed, and our divorce was final. What could be important enough to risk violating the no-contact agreement we'd made? Against my better judgment, I called her when I got home that night. Felix? Her voice was small, frightened, nothing like the confident woman I'd married. Thank you for calling. What do you want, Brielle? We're not supposed to be in contact. I know, but I didn't know who else to call. My lawyer says I'm going to prison. 5 to 10 years, maybe more. That's not my problem. Please just listen. I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed our marriage and stole your money and humiliated you in front of everyone we knew, but I never meant for it to go this far. You never meant to get caught, you mean? No, yes, maybe. But Felix, I loved you. I still love you. What I did with Teddy was stupid and selfish, but it didn't mean anything. You were the best thing in my life, and I threw it away for nothing. I felt a familiar anger rising in my chest. You didn't throw it away for nothing. You threw it away for money, my money. You and Teddy were planning to rob me blind and leave me with nothing. I was scared, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. My business was failing, and I was drowning in debt, and I didn't know how to tell you. Teddy said he could help, said we could start over together, and I was stupid enough to believe him. So you decided to steal from me instead of asking for help? I was ashamed. You were so successful, so stable, and I was falling apart. I thought if I could just fix things on my own, by committing fraud and adultery. I know how it sounds. I know there's no excuse for what I did. But Felix, I'm begging you. Can you find it in your heart to forgive me? Not for my sake, but for what we used to have? I thought about the 7 years we'd spent together, the good times before everything went wrong. I thought about the woman I'd fallen in love with, before I learned who she really was. I forgave you months ago, I said finally. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying that anger was destroying me. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want you back in my life. I understand. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. I know you are. And for what it's worth, I hope you find a way to rebuild your life when this is over. Thank you, she whispered. That means more than you know. We said goodbye, and I turned off my phone. It was the last conversation I ever expected to have with my ex-wife, and it left me feeling strangely peaceful. The next morning, I woke up to find Maris in my kitchen, making coffee and reading the newspaper. We'd been spending more nights together lately, and she'd started keeping clothes at my apartment. Good morning, she said, kissing me softly. Sleep well? Better than I have in months. I poured myself coffee and sat down beside her. Brielle called last night. Maris looked up from the paper, her expression carefully neutral. What did she want? To apologize, I think. She's scared about the prison sentence. How do you feel about that? Surprisingly okay. I think I'm finally ready to move on. Maris smiled and took my hand. I'm glad. You deserve to be happy, Felix. So do you. I squeezed her hand gently. Are you happy? Very. Are you? I looked around my small apartment, at the woman who'd become the center of my new life, at the peaceful morning routine we'd built together. It was nothing like the glossy, expensive lifestyle I'd shared with Brielle, but it was real in a way that marriage had never been. Yes, I said, I really am. 3 weeks later, Brielle pled guilty to 15 federal charges and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Teddy Voss received 6 years for tax evasion and fraud. Both of them lost everything they'd worked for, victims of their own greed and poor judgment. I didn't attend either sentencing. I was too busy planning my future with Maris, who'd agreed to move in with me permanently. 1 month after Brielle's sentencing, I was working late at my office when Rita knocked on my door. There's someone here to see you, she said. Says it's personal. I looked up from my computer to see a familiar figure in the doorway, Mimi Castellano, Brielle's former best friend and the biggest gossip in Seattle's social scene. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her designer handbag. Felix? I hope you don't mind me dropping by. I was in the building for a meeting, and I thought, It's fine, Mimi. Come in. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. What can I do for you? She sat down carefully, smoothing her skirt. I wanted to apologize for everything. I knew about Brielle and Teddy months before you found out, and I should have told you. Why didn't you? Honestly, I was afraid. Brielle could be vindictive when she was crossed, and I didn't want to become her target. I thought maybe it would just burn out on its own. But you were the one who kept dropping hints, weren't you? About Brielle's behavior, her late nights, her sudden trips? Mimi nodded, looking ashamed. I was trying to help without directly betraying her. I thought if I gave you enough clues, you'd figure it out on your own. I did, eventually. I heard about the sentencing. 4 years seems like a lot. She stole over $200,000 from clients and committed credit fraud in my name. She's lucky it wasn't longer. Mimi was quiet for a moment, studying her hands. She asked me to visit her in prison. I said no. That's your choice. Is it wrong? She was my best friend for 10 years. I thought about my last conversation with Brielle, about forgiveness and moving on. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. You have to do what feels right for you. What would you do? I'd probably visit her, once, to say goodbye to the friendship you used to have. Mimi nodded slowly. Maybe I will. Thank you, Felix. And I'm sorry again for not being braver. After she left, I sat in my office thinking about the strange turns life takes. A year ago, I'd been married to a woman who was planning to rob me blind. Now, I was in love with her sister and building a life based on honesty and mutual respect. My phone buzzed with a text from Maris. Dinner at 7? I'm making that pasta you like. I smiled and typed back, Can't wait. Love you. Love you too. Simple words, but they meant everything. With Brielle, love had been complicated, conditional, performance-based. With Maris, it was straightforward and genuine. I packed up my work and headed home to my new life. The apartment was filled with the smell of garlic and herbs when I walked in. Maris was in the kitchen, wearing one of my old shirts and humming while she cooked. She looked up and smiled when she heard me come in. Perfect timing. Dinner's almost ready. I wrapped my arms around her from behind and kissed her neck. How was your day? Good. Busy? I had 3 new clients, all referrals from existing patients. She leaned back against me. How about you? Interesting. Mimi Castellano stopped by to apologize. Brielle's friend? What did she want? I told her about the conversation, about Mimi's guilt, and her request for advice about visiting Brielle in prison. What did you tell her? Maris asked. To follow her conscience, that there's no right or wrong answer. That was good advice. Maris turned in my arms to face me. You're a good man, Felix Rourke. Have I mentioned that lately? Not in the last few hours. She laughed and kissed me softly. Well, you are. Brielle was an idiot to throw you away. Her loss was your gain. And your gain was my gain. We both won. We had dinner on the small balcony overlooking the ship canal, watching the boats pass by in the evening light. It was peaceful, comfortable, the kind of simple pleasure I'd never appreciated during my marriage to Brielle. I have something to tell you, Maris said as we were cleaning up the dishes. Good something or bad something? Good, I think. I hope. She took a deep breath. I got a call from the Department of Corrections today. Brielle wants to see me. I felt a small knot of anxiety form in my stomach. Are you going to visit her? I don't know. Part of me wants to, just to get closure. But part of me thinks it would be a mistake. What does your therapist training tell you? That unfinished business can be toxic, but so can reopening old wounds. Maris sighed. She's my sister, Felix. Despite everything she's done, I still love her. But I also know that she's manipulative and selfish, and any conversation we have will probably be designed to serve her needs, not mine. So don't go. It's not that simple. What if she's genuinely changed? What if prison has given her perspective on her behavior? What if this is my only chance to have an honest conversation with my sister? I understood her dilemma. Family relationships are complicated, even when family members are criminals. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, I said. But if you do visit her, I think you should be very careful about what you share. About us, about your life, about anything she could use to hurt you. You think she'd try to hurt me? I think Brielle is facing 4 years in federal prison, and desperate people do desperate things. She might see you as her only connection to the outside world, or her only hope for support when she gets out. Maris nodded thoughtfully. You're probably right. I'll think about it some more. That night, as we lay in bed together, I found myself thinking about the strange journey that had brought us to this point. A year ago, I'd been planning my revenge against my cheating wife. Now I was in love with her sister and building a new life based on honesty and trust. It wasn't the ending I'd expected when I first found that burner phone, but it was better than anything I could have planned. 3 days later, Maris decided to visit Brielle in federal prison. I drove her to the facility in SeaTac, a grim concrete building surrounded by razor wire and guard towers. Are you sure about this? I asked as we sat in the parking lot. No, but I think I need to do it anyway. Maris squeezed my hand. Wish me luck. Good luck. I'll be here when you're done. I watched her walk into the prison, then settled in to wait. I'd brought a book and some work files, expecting the visit to last an hour or two. Maris came out after 45 minutes, looking drained and sad. How did it go? I asked as she got back in the car. About like I expected. She cried, she apologized, she asked me to help her appeal the sentence. Maris stared out the window at the prison. She also asked me to take care of you. What? She said she knows we're together, and she's happy about it. She said you deserve someone who will treat you right, and she thinks I'm that person. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. How do you feel about her blessing? Conflicted. Part of me is glad she's not bitter about us being together, but part of me wonders if it's just another manipulation, another way for her to stay connected to our lives. What do you think? I think she's lonely and scared and desperate for any kind of human connection. I think she'd say whatever she thought I wanted to hear if it meant I'd keep visiting her. Are you going to? No. I got the closure I needed. She's not the sister I grew up with anymore, if she ever really was. She's a stranger who happens to share my DNA. We drove home in comfortable silence, both of us processing the end of a difficult chapter in our lives. That evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, Maris suddenly turned to me with a serious expression. Felix, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Are you with me because you love me, or because I'm a way to get back at Brielle? The question caught me off guard. What makes you ask that? Today, seeing her in prison, talking about us, it made me wonder if our whole relationship is just an extension of your revenge against her. I turned off the movie and faced her fully. Maris, I fell in love with you because you're kind, intelligent, funny, and beautiful, because you make me want to be a better person, because when I'm with you, I feel like the best version of myself. But the fact that you're Brielle's sister is irrelevant. If anything, it's a complication I could do without. I love you for who you are, not for who you're related to. She studied my face for a long moment, then smiled. I love you too, and I needed to hear that. Good, because I plan to keep saying it for a very long time. 6 months later, I proposed to Maris on the same balcony where we'd had our first dinner together. She said yes, and we started planning a small wedding for the following spring. We didn't invite Brielle. Epilogue. The last word. 2 years after Brielle's sentencing, I was cleaning out some old files when I found the USB drive that had started everything, the one containing the hotel security footage that had destroyed my ex-wife's reputation and career. I stared at it for a long moment, remembering the satisfaction I'd felt watching her humiliation play out in front of Seattle's elite. It seemed like a lifetime ago, that angry, vengeful version of myself. Maris found me in my office, holding the drive. "What's that?" she asked. "Evidence from my previous life. I should probably destroy it." "Probably." She sat down on the arm of my chair. "Any regrets?" "About the divorce?" "No." "About the way I handled it?" "Sometimes." "You were hurt and angry. You acted like a human being." "I acted like an asshole. A justified asshole, maybe, but still an asshole." "And now?" I looked around my office, at the photos of Maris and me on vacation, at the wedding invitation proof scattered across my desk, at the life we'd built together. Now I'm grateful. If Brielle hadn't cheated, if she hadn't stolen from me, if she hadn't forced me to confront who she really was, I never would have found you. So she did us a favor? In the most twisted way possible, yes. Maris laughed and kissed the top of my head. Should we send her a thank you card? Let's not push it. I deleted the files from the USB drive and threw it in the trash. The past was over. The future was just beginning. A month later, Maris and I were married in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside Seattle. It was everything my first wedding hadn't been. Intimate, genuine, focused on love rather than appearances. As we danced to our first song as husband and wife, I caught sight of a familiar figure at the edge of the reception area. For a moment, I thought it might be Brielle, somehow released early from prison. But as the woman turned, I realized it was just someone who looked like her from a distance. "Everything okay?" Maris asked, following my gaze. "Perfect," I said, pulling her closer. "Everything's perfect." And it was. I'd spent so much energy on revenge, on making Brielle pay for what she'd done to me, that I'd almost missed the real prize, finding someone who loved me for who I actually was, not for what I could provide. Justice had been served, but more importantly, I'd learned to move on. The compliance man had found his reckoning, but he'd also found something better. Peace. As the song ended and we walked back to our table, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see a woman I didn't recognize, middle-aged and well-dressed. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Felix Rourke?" "Yes." "I'm Miranda Voss, Teddy's ex-wife." She extended her hand. "I wanted to thank you." I shook her hand, confused. "Thank me for what?" "For exposing what my husband was really like. The video you showed at that charity gala. It opened my eyes to who I'd married. I was able to protect my assets and my reputation because of your actions." "I'm sorry you had to go through that." "Don't be. You did me a favor. I'm remarried now to a wonderful man who actually deserves my trust." She smiled. "I heard you remarried too. Congratulations." "Thank you." She walked away, leaving me with a strange sense of completion. My revenge against Brielle and Teddy had been more far-reaching than I'd realized, creating ripple effects that had touched lives I'd never considered. But that was the past. Tonight was about the future. I rejoined my wife at our table, surrounded by friends and family who genuinely cared about us. The contrast with my first wedding, all show and no substance, couldn't have been more stark. "Who was that?" Maris asked. "Someone from my previous life," I said. "But she doesn't matter anymore. Nothing from that life matters anymore." "Good answer." Maris raised her champagne glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I agreed. We clinked glasses and kissed, sealing our commitment to a future built on honesty, trust, and genuine love. Later that night, as we lay in bed in the honeymoon suite, Maris turned to me with a mischievous smile. "I have a confession," she said. "Oh no, please tell me you don't have a secret boyfriend." She laughed. "Nothing like that, but I wasn't entirely honest about how I felt when you first started your revenge campaign against Brielle." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I was impressed. She'd been getting away with manipulating people her entire life, and you were the first person to actually make her face consequences for her actions. You thought I was justified? I thought you were magnificent. Watching you systematically dismantle her lies and expose her crimes, it was like watching justice in action." even when I went too far? Especially then. Brielle needed to learn that her actions had consequences, and you were the one brave enough to teach her? I pulled her closer, marveling at how well she understood me. I love you, Mrs. Rourke. I love you too, Mr. Rourke. We fell asleep in each other's arms, two people who'd found their way to happiness through the wreckage of betrayal and revenge. 6 months later, I received a letter from Brielle in prison. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. Dear Felix, it began, I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know that I'm genuinely happy about your marriage to Maris. She's a good person who deserves love, and you're a good man who deserves happiness. I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to understand what I threw away. I hope you can forgive me someday, not for my sake, but for your own. Holding on to anger will only hurt you in the end. Be happy. You've earned it. Brielle. I showed the letter to Maris, who read it without comment. What do you think? I asked. I think she's learned something in prison. Whether it's genuine remorse or just self-pity, I can't say. But it doesn't matter anymore. Should I write back? Do you want to? I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No, that chapter of my life is closed. I threw the letter away and never looked back. A year later, Maris gave birth to our daughter, Emma. Holding her in my arms for the first time, I understood that everything I'd been through, the betrayal, the divorce, the revenge, the pain, had been necessary to bring me to this moment. If Brielle hadn't cheated, I never would have met Maris. If I hadn't fought for justice, I never would have learned my own strength. If I hadn't experienced betrayal, I never would have appreciated genuine love. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are actually the best things in disguise. As I watched my wife nursing our daughter, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not to Brielle exactly, but to the universe that had somehow turned my greatest pain into my greatest joy. The compliance man had found his reckoning, but more importantly, he'd found his redemption. And that was worth more than any revenge.